I moved states, got promoted to director, earned a 70% pay raise, and nobody in my family noticed. Nobody. Not my son, Mark. Not my daughter, Megan. I didn't even get a text asking where I was. It was as if I had never existed. Until my sister, Claire, posted a photo of my new apartment on Instagram. Then my phone exploded. Mark texted me, "Mom, could you sell that apartment? It's to help Jessica. We need $200,000 for her med spa. $200,000. After months of not speaking to me. After years of being invisible. But let me tell you how I got here. Because this story didn't start with that text. It started long before. In a kitchen that no longer felt like mine. In a life that had stopped belonging to me. I should have been used to being invisible. But somehow, it still hurt. I was standing at the stove, stirring a pot of chicken soup that nobody had asked me to make, while my son Mark talked on the phone in the living room, as if I were part of the furniture. His voice was loud, animated, full of that energy he never used with me. He was talking to Jessica, his wife, about a vacation to Hawaii they were planning. $500 a night for the hotel. I had heard correctly. $500. And it had been 3 months since he'd paid me back the $200 I loaned him to fix his car. I turned off the burner. I dried my hands on the apron I'd had for 15 years, the one with an oil stain that never came out, and walked into the living room. Mark didn't even look up. He kept talking, laughing, promising Jessica that this time they would definitely get a place with an ocean view. I touched his shoulder gently. He frowned, as if I'd interrupted him in the middle of life or death surgery, and held up a hand to silence me. A gesture, like you'd give a dog that's barking too much. I backed away. I went back to the kitchen. I poured the soup into a glass container, covered it with plastic wrap, and put it in the refrigerator. No one would eat it. I knew that. But I did it anyway, because that's what I did. Cook, clean, exist in the margins. 2 days later, my daughter Megan arrived unannounced. She brought my 2 grandchildren, Mason and Lily, who ran straight into the living room and turned on the TV at full volume. Megan walked in behind them, her phone in her hand, without even looking at me. "Mom, I need you to watch them today. I have an important meeting and the babysitter canceled." It wasn't a question. It was an order. I had a doctor's appointment that afternoon. A checkup I had been putting off for months because every time I tried to go, someone needed something. But Megan was already walking out the door, blowing me a kiss over her shoulder without turning around. "I'll leave you money for food," she shouted from outside. She left nothing. I spent the afternoon watching cartoons with Mason and Lily, making them ham sandwiches that they barely touched because they wanted pizza. I called the clinic to cancel my appointment. The receptionist sighed on the other end of the line, as if I were just another irresponsible patient who didn't value her time. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry." Megan returned at 8 o'clock in the evening, smelling like expensive perfume and carrying a bag from a clothing store that cost more than I earned in a month. The kids were already asleep on the couch. She woke them up in a hurry, without thanking me, without asking how my day had been. She just said she had to go because she had yoga early the next morning. I closed the door behind her and stood in the hallway, looking at the walls of my own house as if they belonged to a stranger. Everything smelled like exhaustion, like years of not mattering, like decades of being the one who was always there, without anyone noticing that I was also fading away. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed, with the light off, thinking about the last time someone had asked me how I was. Really asked. Not an automatic, "How are you?" while checking their phone, but a real question, looking me in the eye, waiting for an honest answer. I couldn't remember. The next morning, Mark showed up again, this time with Jessica. "We need to talk, Mom," he said, and something in his tone put me on alert. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had celebrated his birthdays, where I had served thousands of dinners, where I had existed in silence for so many years I had lost count. Jessica was smiling, but it was a forced smile, the kind people use when they need something. "Mom," Mark began, "we know you've been saving. And well, we have an incredible opportunity, a business. Jessica wants to open a med spa, and we just need a small loan to get started." Small. The word floated in the air like an obvious lie. "How much?" I asked. $50,000. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. $50,000. My life savings. The money I had saved penny by penny, working overtime, denying myself small pleasures, living on the bare minimum. Mark, I don't have that kind of money, I said, and my voice sounded weaker than I wanted. He and Jessica exchanged a look. Mom, I know you have savings, and this is an investment. We'd pay you back with interest. In 2 years, maybe 3, maybe never, I thought. But I didn't say it. I just shook my head, feeling something inside me begin to break in a different way. Not with sadness, but with clarity. I can't, Mark. I'm sorry. He stood up abruptly. The chair scraped the floor with a sharp sound that made me flinch. It's always the same with you, Mom. You never support our dreams. Jessica took his arm, with that same fake smile, and they left without saying goodbye. The door shut with a solid thud that echoed through the house. I just sat there, in that kitchen that no longer felt mine, staring at the cup of coffee cooling in front of me. And that's when I knew. Not with words, not with a plan, just with a certainty that shot through me like a silent lightning bolt. I couldn't go on like this. I didn't want to. 3 weeks later, I got the call that would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning. I was cleaning the house, as usual, when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Carroll, this is Mr. David Chen from Human Resources. We need you to come to the main office tomorrow. It's important. My heart sped up. I had been working at the same accounting firm for 26 years, in the same small office, at the same desk by the window that overlooked the parking lot. 26 years of being invisible there, too. I thought they were going to fire me. That they had finally noticed I was 69 years old and wanted to replace me with someone younger. I arrived at the main office with sweaty palms. The building was huge, the kind with marble floors and decorative plants that looked more expensive than my car. Mr. Chen greeted me with a smile I couldn't interpret. Carol, we'd like to offer you a promotion. Regional Director of Accounting. The position is in another state, but it comes with a 70% raise and a full relocation package. I was silent. The words weren't registering. Director, 70%. Another state. Me? Was all I could manage. You, Mr. Chen confirmed. We've reviewed your work over all these years. Your accuracy is flawless. You've never had a significant error. And frankly, we need someone trustworthy in that region. I left that office walking on a cloud. For the first time in decades, someone had seen me. Someone had noticed my work, my effort, my existence. I got home and wanted to share the news. I called Mark. He didn't answer. I sent him a text. I have something important to tell you. He replied 4 hours later. Busy, Mom. Talk later. I called Megan. She actually answered, but I heard the background noise of a restaurant. Mom, I'm at lunch. Is it urgent? I got promoted. I'm moving to another state for work. Oh, that's great. Hey, I'll call you back, okay? She hung up. I sat on the sofa in my living room, looking at the walls I had painted myself 10 years ago, the furniture I had bought on sale, the photographs of my children hanging in cheap frames. Nobody asked me where I was going. Nobody asked when. Nobody asked if I needed help. That night, I made the decision. I would take the job, and I wouldn't tell them anything else. If they didn't care when I told them, then I just wouldn't tell them. The next few days were a blur. I signed contracts. I accepted the moving package. I looked for apartments online in a city I had never visited. I did it all alone, in silence, just as I had done everything in my life. Mark showed up one afternoon, 2 days before my move. I was packing boxes in my bedroom. He walked in without knocking. Mom, did you reconsider the loan for Jessica? I didn't look up from the box where I was packing my books. No, Mark, I don't have that money. It's just that it's a really great opportunity. We could triple the investment in 5 years. I sealed the box with packing tape. The sound was sharp, final. I can't help you with that. He huffed, annoyed, and left the room. He didn't notice the boxes. He didn't notice I was packing up my entire life. He only saw his frustration, his need, his self-interest. The day of the move arrived with a light rain that pattered against the windows. I hired a small company. 2 young men who loaded my furniture with care, as if it were valuable, even though it wasn't. I offered them coffee and cookies. They thanked me with genuine smiles. More warmth from 2 strangers than I had received from my own family in years. I left the keys to the house in the landlord's mailbox. I closed the door without looking back. I got into my car, an old but reliable sedan, and drove toward a city whose name I could barely pronounce properly. 6 hours on the highway. 6 hours of silence. 6 hours to think about everything I was leaving behind, and everything that, just maybe, I was about to find. I arrived at dusk. The apartment the company had arranged for me was on the 12th floor of a modern building, with huge windows overlooking the illuminated city. It was small but bright. It had light wood floors, a kitchen with new appliances, a balcony big enough for a chair. It was mine. Only mine. That first night, I slept on an air mattress in the middle of the empty living room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled new. I had no furniture yet, no curtains, but I had peace. A silence that didn't hurt. A silence that, for the first time in decades, felt like freedom. The next morning, I started my new job. The office was large, with organized cubicles and a break room with real coffee. Not that watery instant stuff I was used to. My team greeted me with respect. They called me ma'am or director. They asked for my opinion. They listened to me. Brian, the senior accountant, helped me get settled. He was a man in his 50s, with thick glasses and a kind smile. "If you need anything, Mrs. Carroll, just let me know. I know moving is complicated." "Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that." And I meant it. Because someone, a complete stranger, had taken a moment to see if I was okay. The weeks passed. I bought simple furniture, a table, a gray sofa, a floor lamp that gave off warm light. I turned the balcony into my favorite spot. Every morning, I drank my coffee out there, watching the city wake up, feeling the cool air on my face. Nobody from my family called. Not once. I sent a group text to Mark and Megan telling them I was settled, that everything had gone well. Mark replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Megan didn't reply at all. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Maybe because I wasn't expecting anything anymore. Or maybe because I was finally learning that existing for others was not the same as existing for myself. And, for the first time in my life, I was existing for me. 3 months went by. 3 months in which my life transformed in ways I never imagined possible. I woke up at 6 in the morning, not because someone needed me, but because I wanted to see the sunrise from my balcony. I made my coffee slowly, without rushing, without interruptions. I chose my clothes based on what made me feel good, not what was practical for cleaning or cooking. The work fulfilled me in a strange way. Every report I reviewed, every decision I made, every meeting where my voice mattered, reminded me that I was more than just a forgotten mother. I was a professional. I was competent. I was respected. Brian became something of a friend. We had lunch together on Fridays at a small Korean restaurant near the office. He told me about his daughter studying medicine, about his passion for landscape photography, about his amicable divorce 5 years ago. I told him very little. I still didn't know how to explain that I had disappeared from my children's lives without them even noticing. One Saturday afternoon, while I was organizing some documents in my apartment, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I almost never expected anyone. I opened the door, and there was Claire, my younger sister, with a small suitcase and that mischievous smile she'd always had. "Surprise," she said, and hugged me tightly. "Claire, what are you doing here? I came to visit you. Did you think you were going to escape without me coming to see your new life?" Besides, I had a few days off and wanted to see the city. Claire had always been different. 4 years younger than me, divorced, no kids, living her life with a freedom I had never allowed myself. She worked as a freelance graphic designer and traveled constantly. We were close, but we didn't see each other often. She knew about my move because I had told her on the phone, and unlike my children, she had asked questions. Lots of questions. We entered the apartment, and Claire let out a long whistle. "Carol, this is beautiful. Look at these windows. Look at that view." She walked straight to the balcony and stood there, gazing at the city spread out before us. The afternoon sun gilded the buildings. In the distance, you could see mountains. You have to let me take pictures. This is incredible. We spent the weekend together. I showed her my office, took her to the places I had discovered. The French bakery where I bought croissants on Sundays, the park where I walked in the afternoons, the farmer's market where they sold fresh flowers. Claire took pictures of everything. Of the city, of the food, of me smiling in front of a colorful mural. "You look different," she told me on Sunday morning as we had breakfast on the balcony. "You look lighter." "I feel different," I admitted. "Do Mark and Megan know what your life is like now?" I shook my head. "They haven't asked." Claire frowned, but didn't say anything else. She knew the history. She knew how they had treated me for years. She herself had witnessed many of those silent humiliations. On Sunday afternoon, before she left for the airport, Claire insisted on taking one last photo. I stood on the balcony, with the city in the background, the wind blowing my hair, a coffee cup in my hand. I felt ridiculous posing like that, but she insisted. "Someday you're going to want to remember this moment," she said. "The moment you started living for you." I drove her to the airport, and we said goodbye with a long hug. "Take care of yourself, big sister," she whispered, "and don't let anyone steal this piece from you." That night, as I was making dinner, my phone started ringing off the hook. Texts, notifications, missed calls, all from Mark and Megan. I felt a shiver run down my spine. In 3 months, they hadn't shown any signs of life. And now this. I opened my messages. Mark had written, "Mom, where are you? Call me, it's urgent." Megan, "Mom, I need to talk to you. It's important." More messages, more urgency, more sudden need for my existence. Then I saw Claire's Instagram post. She had tagged me, the photo from the balcony, me smiling, relaxed, with the city behind me like a postcard. And the caption read, "Visiting my big sister in her new apartment. So proud of you, Carol. You deserve it all." The comments were multiplying. Acquaintances from years ago asking where I was, congratulating me, surprised. And surely Mark and Megan had seen it. Not because they followed my life, but because Claire had many mutual contacts with them. I took a deep breath. I didn't answer the messages. I turned off my phone and finished making my dinner in silence. Pasta with homemade tomato sauce. Simple. Perfect. Just for me. The next morning, I turned on my phone on the way to work. 20 more messages. Now Jessica was texting too, and what they were saying was starting to take shape. "Mark, Mom, I saw your new apartment. It looks incredible. Can we talk?" Megan, "Mom, why didn't you tell us you moved to a place like that? I'd love to visit." Jessica, "Mom-in-law, congratulations on your new home. Mark told me about it, and I'd love to chat with you about an idea." An idea, of course. Brian noticed my tense face during the morning meeting. "Are you okay, Mrs. Carroll?" he asked later, when the others had left. "Family problems?" I said, and I was surprised how easy it was to admit it. "If you need to talk, I'm here." "Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate that." That afternoon, I finally replied. A simple message to each of them. "I'm fine. I've been busy with work. We'll talk soon." But they didn't wait. Mark called immediately. I let it ring. He called again and again. I finally answered. "Mom, why didn't you tell us you moved to such an elegant place? That building looks so expensive." "It's the apartment the company got for me, Mark. It comes with the relocation package." A white lie. I had chosen it. I paid the difference in rent with my new salary. But I didn't owe him an explanation. "Look, Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Jessica and I are still moving forward with the med spa plan. And we saw your apartment. If you could sell it, or maybe take out a loan against it." "Mark, this apartment isn't mine. It's a rental." Silence on the other end. "A rental?" "Yes. But you look so well off in the photos," I thought. "You thought what, Mark? You thought I was suddenly rich and could solve all your problems?" "That's not it, Mom. It's just that Jessica really needs this money. Her dream is that clinic. And you're her mother-in-law. Family helps family." "Family," I repeated, and the word sounded hollow in my mouth. "Mark, you didn't call me once in 3 months. Not once. You didn't ask how I was. You didn't ask if I needed help with the move. You didn't ask anything. And now that you saw a picture of a nice apartment, suddenly I'm family. Mom, it's not fair that. No, Mark. What's not fair is that I only exist for you when you need something. And I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But it wasn't fear. It was power. It was clarity. It was the truth finally spoken out loud. Megan called minutes later. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I listened to it. Mom, I don't know what Mark told you, but I just wanted to visit. And, well, Daniel and I are looking to buy a house. We thought maybe you could help us with the down payment. It's not much. Just $30,000. $30,000. Not much. To them, it was never much. Because it wasn't their money. It was mine. The money I had earned with decades of work. The money I had saved by denying myself everything. The money that now, finally, was just mine. I turned off my phone again. I poured myself a glass of wine. I went out onto the balcony and sat in my chair, watching the city lights turn on one by one, like earthbound stars. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not a sad smile, not a resigned smile, but the smile of someone who finally understood that her life belonged to her. The following days were a silent battle. Mark called 3, 4 times a day. Megan sent long messages full of justifications. Jessica even sent me a 15-minute audio message explaining her life's project and how I could be part of something big. As if my participation was anything other than my money, I continued to ignore them. I went to work, did my routine, lived my life, but they didn't give up. They had found my new number, my new address through Claire, and now they wanted to enter my new life with the same old attitude, taking without asking, demanding without giving. One afternoon, Brian and I were reviewing some balance sheets in the office when my phone vibrated again. He noticed my expression. Excuse me for prying, Mrs. Carol, but you've had that look on your face for days. Are you sure you don't want to talk about it? I was quiet for a moment. Then, without really knowing why, I told him everything. I told him about the years of being invisible, about the move nobody noticed, about Claire's photo, about the desperate messages asking for money. It all came out like a river that had been dammed for too long. Brian listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took off his glasses and cleaned them with his handkerchief, like he always did when he was thinking. Can I tell you something without it sounding disrespectful? Go ahead. You don't owe them anything. Absolutely nothing. Being a mother doesn't mean being a bank. Being family doesn't mean letting them use you. I know, I said, but my voice sounded less convinced than I wanted. Do you? Because from what you're telling me, they still believe they can pressure you, and they will keep doing it until you set a real boundary. I'm not answering them anymore, but you also haven't told them no. Not clearly. He was right. I was avoiding, postponing, hoping they would get tired. But people like Mark and Megan don't get tired. They just get more insistent. That night, sitting on my balcony with a blanket over my legs because the weather was starting to get cool, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep running. I wasn't going to stay in this limbo. If they wanted answers, they would get them. But they would be my answers, on my terms. I wrote a text to the family group chat that included Mark, Megan, and Jessica. I'm inviting you to dinner here, at my apartment, next Saturday at 7 o'clock in the evening. We'll talk about everything you need to talk about. I'll send the address. The replies came immediately. They all confirmed. Of course they did. I was finally giving them what they wanted. Access. The days leading up to Saturday, I spent in a strange calm. I wasn't nervous. I was prepared. I had made decisions that were going to change everything. Friday afternoon, I went to the bank. I made some transfers. I signed some papers. I spoke with my lawyer, Mr. Arthur Lewis, an older man who had helped me write my will years ago. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Carroll? He asked me. Completely sure. Saturday arrived with a clear sky. I spent the morning cleaning the apartment, even though it was already clean. I prepared a simple dinner, roast chicken with potatoes and a salad. Nothing elaborate. Nothing that required too much effort. I no longer cooked to impress anyone. By 6:30, everything was ready. The table was set. The windows were open, letting in the cool breeze. The city sparkled in the background like a reminder that I had built this. Me. Alone. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Such punctuality when it came to getting something. I opened the door. Mark entered first, followed by Jessica. Megan arrived alone. Daniel, her husband, didn't come. How convenient. "Mom," Mark said, and he hugged me. A hug that felt rehearsed, calculated. "This place is incredible." Jessica kissed my cheek, leaving a pink lipstick mark that I had to wipe off later. "Mom-in-law, how elegant. I love your style." Megan was more direct. "Hi, Mom. Thanks for having us." They moved into the living room. They admired the windows, the balcony, the view. They made comments about how expensive this place must be, about what a great location, about how much my life had changed, all with that tone that mixed admiration with envy. We sat down to dinner. The conversation was forced at first. They talked about traffic, the weather, trivial things. I ate in silence, watching them exchange glances, waiting for the right moment to bring up what had really brought them here. It was Mark who finally broke the false ice. "Mom, you look great. This change has been incredible for you." "Thank you, Mark. We wanted to talk to you about the conversation we had a few months ago, about Jessica's med spa." Jessica leaned forward, with that professional smile she must use on her clients. "Mrs. Carroll, I've been working on the business plan. I have projections, contacts, everything is ready. We just need the initial capital, and we thought that, with your new position, maybe you could consider helping us. It doesn't have to be all at once. We could work out a payment plan, with interest, of course." "Of course," I repeated. Megan cleared her throat. "Mom, I wanted to talk to you too. Daniel and I found a beautiful house. It's perfect for us and the kids, but we need $30,000 for the down payment. I know it's money, but it's an investment. When we sell, we'll pay you back." They all looked at me, waiting, like they had always waited, as if I were a vending machine for solutions to their problems. I set my fork down on the plate. I wiped my mouth with my napkin. I took a deep breath. "I want to ask you something," I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected. "In the last 3 months, did any of you call me just to ask how I was?" Silence. "Did anyone ask me if the move was hard? If I missed my old house? If I felt lonely in a new city?" "Mom," Mark said, "we've been busy." I was busy too, Mark. For 26 years I was busy being your mother, and it was never an excuse to forget about you. Megan looked down. "You didn't notice when I left," I continued. "You didn't notice I changed cities. You didn't notice I got promoted. You didn't notice anything until Claire posted a picture of this apartment. Until you thought I had money." "That's not true, Mom," Megan protested. "We wanted to visit you." "When? When exactly did you want to visit me before you saw that photo?" No one answered. Jessica tried to smooth things over. "Mrs. Carroll, I understand you feel that way, but family is family, and families support each other in tough times." "You're right, Jessica. Families do support each other, in tough times and in good times, not just when they need money." I got up from the table. I walked to the balcony, and they followed me with their eyes. "This apartment that impresses you so much, this apartment that made you remember I exist, is a rental. It's not mine. I can't sell it. I can't use it as collateral. It's not worth the $200,000 you imagined." Mark turned pale. "But Mom, your salary." "My salary is mine, Mark. It's for my retirement, for my old age, for the years I have left in this world." "But we're your family," Megan insisted, her voice starting to break. "Don't you want to see us succeed?" I turned to look at her. "Of course I want to see you succeed, but your success cannot be built on my eternal sacrifice. Not anymore." "Mom, you're being selfish," Mark said, and those words cut the air like a knife. "Selfish," I repeated. What an interesting word, coming from you. The atmosphere had become dense, heavy. Jessica stared at her plate. Megan's eyes were wet. Mark was clenching his jaw. "I think it's time for you to leave," I said calmly. "The dinner is over." They stood up slowly. Megan grabbed her purse. Mark looked at me with a mixture of rage and disappointment. Jessica maintained her professional composure until the end. I walked them to the door. Before leaving, Mark turned around. "You're going to regret this, Mom." "Maybe," I said. "But at least it will be my decision." I closed the door behind them. The silence flooded the apartment. A silence that didn't scare me. A silence that felt like victory. I stood in front of the closed door for what felt like an eternity. I heard their footsteps retreating down the hall, the sound of the elevator opening, closing, then nothing. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the wind moving the curtains. I walked back to the table. The half-eaten plates, the water glasses, the crumpled napkins. It all looked like the set of a play that had ended abruptly. I started to clear, wash, organize. My hands moved on autopilot while my mind processed what had just happened. I had said no. Finally. Clearly. Without apologies. And I didn't feel guilty. I felt exhausted. Yes. Sad. Maybe. But not guilty. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights flicker like fallen stars. My phone vibrated several times. Messages from Mark, from Megan. I didn't read them. Not yet. Sunday dawned gray. One of those mornings where the sky blends with the concrete and everything seems suspended in time. I made coffee and finally opened the messages. Mark had written at 11 o'clock at night. "I can't believe you're so hard on your own family. Jessica is devastated. You know how hard she's worked to get here." Megan sent something shorter. "It's fine, Mom. I got the message. Don't worry about us." That "don't worry about us" was loaded with reproach, with guilt, with manipulation disguised as wounded dignity. I replied to both of them with the same message. "I love you. I will always love you. But I can no longer be your financial solution. I hope you understand that someday." Mark replied immediately. "This is a mistake, Mom. A mistake you're going to regret." Megan didn't reply. I blocked their numbers, not permanently. I just needed space. I needed silence to hear myself think. On Monday, I arrived at work with a strange mixture of exhaustion and clarity. Brian saw me walk in and knew immediately that something had happened. "How was the dinner?" he asked when we were alone in the conference room. "Difficult, but necessary." "Did you tell them no?" "I told them no." He nodded in approval. "Good for you, Mrs. Carroll. That takes more courage than people think." "I don't feel brave. I feel tired." Courage doesn't always feel like triumph. Sometimes it just feels like survival. Those words stuck with me. Survival. That's exactly what I was doing. Surviving the guilt they had taught me to carry. Surviving the idea that being a mother meant giving everything until I was empty. The days turned into weeks. Mark and Megan didn't write again. At first, I checked my phone, expecting messages. Then, I stopped checking so often. The absence stopped hurting and started to feel like relief. Claire called one afternoon. She had been out of the country and didn't know about the drama. "What happened?" she asked after I told her. "I saw Mark unfriended me on social media. I told them no to lending them money. And they didn't take it well." She let out a dry laugh. "Of course they didn't. But I'm glad. Carol, it was about time. Do you think I'm a bad mother? I think you're finally being good to yourself. And that doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you human." Those words gave me permission I didn't know I needed. At work, things were going well. Better than well. I had implemented new systems that increased the department's efficiency. The CEO congratulated me in a meeting. Brian and I had become close. It wasn't romance. It was something simpler and more valuable. Genuine friendship. One Friday afternoon, he invited me for coffee after work at that Korean restaurant we liked. "Mrs. Carroll, I want to ask you something. And you can say no." I tensed up a bit. "What?" "A group of friends and I are going hiking tomorrow. To the mountains. Nothing extreme, just a 3-hour walk and a picnic. Would you like to come?" It had been decades since I'd gone hiking. Decades since I'd done something just for fun, with no practical purpose. "I'd love to," I said, and I was surprised how easy it was to accept. Saturday dawned perfect. Clear sky, cool temperature. Brian picked me up at 7 o'clock in the morning. There were 3 other people in the car. Sarah, an accountant in her 40s with a contagious laugh. Kenji, a quiet but kind engineer. And Chloe, a young designer full of energy. We drove for an hour and a half to the trailhead. The mountain rose up, green and majestic. The air smelled like pine and damp earth. We started walking, and I realized something. I hadn't felt this present in. I couldn't remember how long. I wasn't thinking about the past. I wasn't worrying about the future. I was just there, breathing, walking, existing. Sarah walked beside me. She told me about her recent divorce, about how she was rediscovering herself at 43. My ex always said I was boring because I didn't want to do these things. But it wasn't that I was boring. It was that he never invited me to be part of his world. He just wanted me to exist in mine, small and convenient for him. I understood her perfectly. We reached the summit after 2 hours. There was a viewpoint overlooking the valley. It was one of those places that reminds you how small you are, and at the same time, how vast your world can be if you let it. We sat down to eat the sandwiches we had brought. Chloe pulled out a small guitar she had in her backpack and played songs I didn't know, but that made me smile. Kenji told terrible jokes that made us laugh more at how bad they were than at the actual punchlines. Brian sat next to me. "Are you doing okay, Mrs. Carroll?" "I'm more than okay, Brian. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad you came. You deserve these moments." On the way back, as we descended the mountain with tired legs but light spirits, my phone vibrated. I had left it on silent all morning. I had 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail. I listened to it that night, when I was back home, showered, with a cup of tea in my hands. It was Jessica. Her voice sounded different. Less professional. More desperate. "Mrs. Carroll, it's Jessica. I know you and Mark aren't on good terms right now, but I need to talk to you. Woman to woman. My mother has cancer. The treatments are so expensive. Mark doesn't want you to know, but we're desperate. It's not for the med spa. It was never just for the med spa. Please, call me." The message ended with a choked sob. I sat on the sofa, phone in hand, feeling the solid ground I had built beneath my feet begin to tremble again. But this time, it was different. This time, I knew something I hadn't known before. I knew that emotional manipulation has many faces, and that some of them use real tragedy to get what they want. I didn't call back that night. I needed to think. I needed to be sure that any decision I made was mine, not the product of guilt or fear. On Sunday, I called Mr. Arthur Lewis, my lawyer. "Mrs. Carroll, what a surprise. Is everything all right? I need to confirm something. The documents we signed last week, are they processed?" "Yes. Everything is in order. Your assets are protected according to your instructions." "Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider? It's a very definitive decision." "I am completely sure." I hung up and took a deep breath. Then I dialed Jessica's number. She answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Carroll? Jessica, I got your message. I'm very sorry to hear about your mother." "Thank you." Her voice broke. It's very hard. And Mark is so stressed. That's why. The money. It wasn't for us. It was for her. I understand. And I'm sorry you're going through this. But my answer is still no. Silence on the other end. "What?" Her voice changed, hardened. "I am not lending you money, Jessica. Not for a clinic. Not for treatments. Not for anything. But my mother is dying, and I am deeply sorry for that. But it doesn't change the fact that you only sought me out when you thought I had money. That for months you didn't care about me. That Mark called me selfish for setting boundaries. You are a terrible woman." She spat the words. "A terrible mother." "Maybe," I said calmly. "But it's my decision." And I hung up. This time, I wasn't shaking. This time, I wasn't doubting. Because I knew, with the most absolute certainty, that I had made the right decision. The days that followed were strangely peaceful. Like the quiet after a storm. I expected to feel guilty. I expected doubt to eat away at me. But it never came. Instead, there was a peace I hadn't known in decades. I blocked Jessica's number too. Not with anger. just with the certainty that I needed to protect my space, my calm, my newly built life. Brian noticed the change in me during our Monday morning meeting. "You look lighter, Mrs. Carroll, like you let go of something heavy." "I think I did," I replied. "I think I finally let go of the obligation to be everything to everyone. That's a huge accomplishment. Most people never manage it." We were reviewing the quarterly reports when my office phone rang. It was the receptionist. "Mrs. Carroll, there's someone here who says he's your son. Should I send him up?" My stomach clenched. "Mark. Here. At my job." "No," I said, my voice firm. "Tell him I'm in an important meeting and cannot be disturbed. If he needs to speak with me, he can send me an email." Brian looked at me with concern. "Are you okay?" "I will be." 15 minutes later, the receptionist called again. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carroll, but your son is insisting. He says it's urgent. Something about a family emergency." The word emergency. Always the same strategy. Create urgency. Apply pressure. Make the other person give in out of fear or guilt. "Please tell him that if it's a true emergency, he should call emergency services. I cannot help him right now." I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Brian stood up. "Do you want me to go down?" "I can talk to him. Tell him to leave." "No, Brian. Thank you. But this is something I have to handle myself." But I didn't handle it by going down to see him. I handled it by staying exactly where I was, working, living my life, not letting his presence dictate my actions. A half hour later, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Mark. He had gotten my new number somehow, probably from Claire, though she swore later it wasn't her. The message read, "I came all this way, Mom. You can't even give me 5 minutes? Is it that hard for you? I need to talk to you face to face. It's about Megan." Megan. Now he was using my daughter as bait. I replied, "Mark, if Megan is having an emergency, she needs to go to the hospital. If she needs to talk to me, she can call me. But I will not allow you to show up at my job unannounced. It's disrespectful." His response was immediate. "Disrespectful is what you're doing. Forgetting your family, acting like we don't exist. Mom, what happened to you? I don't recognize you." I read that message 3 times. "I don't recognize you. How interesting, because I didn't recognize myself either." And that was exactly the point. I wrote, "Mark, this conversation is going nowhere. When you are ready to speak with respect, without manipulation or fake emergencies, we can try. Until then, I need you to respect my boundaries." He didn't reply. I blocked that number too. That afternoon when I left work, I looked around, half expecting to see him waiting in the parking lot, but he wasn't there. He was gone, or so I thought. 2 days later, on Wednesday, Claire called. Her voice sounded tired. "Carol, we need to talk." "What's wrong?" "Mark called me. He's saying horrible things about you, that you've become cruel, that you have money and refuse to help the family, that Jessica's mother is dying and you don't even care." I sighed. "And what do you believe, Claire? I know you. I know if you're setting boundaries, it's because you need them. But I wanted to warn you. Megan called me too. They're organizing. I think they're all going to come to your apartment together." "When?" "This weekend. Saturday. Thanks for the warning. What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." We hung up, and I stood there thinking. I could ignore them, not open the door, pretend I wasn't home, but that would only delay the inevitable. They would keep pushing, insisting, looking for ways to break me. Or I could end this, once and for all. I called Mr. Arthur Lewis. "Mr. Lewis, I need you to be present at my apartment this Saturday, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon." "For what purpose, Mrs. Carroll?" "To be a witness to something important, and to confirm certain legal documents in front of my family." He was silent for a moment. "I understand. I'll be there." On Thursday, I bought a small digital voice recorder, legal in my state for recordings on private property. I put it in a discreet place in the living room. If they were coming with accusations, manipulations, or threats, I was going to have evidence. On Friday, I prepared my apartment like someone setting a stage. Everything clean. Everything in order. I bought cookies and coffee. Not because I wanted to be hospitable, but because I wanted to show them something. That my life was dignified, orderly, and that I was in control. Brian called me that night. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" "I can be there. Just as support." "Thank you, Brian. But it's something I need to face alone. Well, almost alone. My lawyer will be present. If you need anything, call me. Anytime." "I will." Saturday dawned with a bright sun that seemed ironic, considering what was about to happen. I dressed in simple but elegant clothes. Black slacks, a cream-colored blouse, comfortable shoes. I styled my hair, which I now wore shorter. A cut I had gotten last month that made me feel renewed. At 2:30, Mr. Lewis arrived. He carried a worn leather briefcase and a serious expression. "Ready, Mrs. Carroll?" "Ready. Remember, you have every right to ask them to leave at any moment. This is your home." "I know." At 3 o'clock on the dot, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath. I pressed the intercom button. "Yes?" "Mom, it's us." I buzzed them up. When I opened the door, there they all were. Mark, Jessica, Megan, and to my surprise, Daniel, Megan's husband, who I barely knew because he was always busy when the family got together. They entered in silence. Their eyes went immediately to Mr. Lewis, who was sitting on the sofa with his briefcase on his lap. "Who's he?" Mark asked suspiciously. "This is my lawyer, Mr. Arthur Lewis." "Your lawyer?" "Mom, what's going on here?" "Please, sit down," I said calmly. "We're going to talk, once and for all." They sat down awkwardly on the armchairs. Jessica looked around with an expression I couldn't decipher. Megan's eyes were red, as if she had been crying. Daniel just looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I served coffee, though no one had asked for it. I offered cookies, which no one took. Then I sat down across from them, with Mr. Lewis at my side like a silent anchor. "You asked to come," I began. "So here I am. I'm listening." Mark cleared his throat. "Mom, we came because we're worried about you. You've changed. You've become cold, distant. You're not the mom we knew." "You're right," I said. "I'm not the mom you knew. Because that mom existed for you. This mom exists for herself, too." Jessica intervened, her voice soft and manipulative. "Mrs. Carroll, I know we've had misunderstandings, but we're family, and families get through their differences. My mother really is sick. That wasn't a lie." "I didn't say it was a lie, Jessica. I said I wasn't giving you money. Those are two different things." "But you could help and you won't," Mark snapped. "You have a good salary, a beautiful apartment, and we're struggling." I leaned forward. "Do you know how many years I worked to get here? How many extra hours? How many weekends I sacrificed? 26 years. And during those 26 years, nobody asked how I was. Nobody celebrated my small achievements. I only existed when you needed something." "That's not true," Megan protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Tell me, Megan, when was the last time you called me just to talk, without needing me to babysit, without needing advice, without needing anything, just to check on me?" She didn't answer. The silence stretched out like a crack in ice, and I knew it was time to break it completely. Mr. Lewis opened his briefcase with a click that echoed in the tense silence of the room. He took out several documents, perfectly organized in manila folders. He placed them on the coffee table with care, like someone placing chess pieces before a definitive move. Mark eyed the papers. "What is all that?" "They are legal documents," I answered calmly. "Documents I signed 2 weeks ago. And I want you all to see them, so there is no confusion in the future." Mr. Lewis cleared his throat. With his professional, measured voice, he began. "With your mother's permission, Mrs. Carroll, the documents I have here certify several decisions your mother has made regarding her estate and assets." "Estate?" Jessica repeated. "What estate?" Mr. Lewis looked to me for permission. I nodded. "Mrs. Carroll," he continued, "has established a charitable foundation called Second Chance, dedicated to supporting elderly individuals in situations of family abandonment. She has transferred her entire life savings, accumulated during her working life, to this foundation, approximately $320,000. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own heart beating. "What?" Mark's voice was barely a whisper. My savings no longer belong to me, I said, looking him directly in the eye. They belong to a cause I care about. Elderly people who, like me, spent years being invisible to their families. People who sacrificed everything and ended up alone. Mark shot up from his seat. You can't do that. That money belongs to the family. That money is mine. I corrected him firmly. I earned it, I saved it, and I decided what to do with it. But we're your children, Megan cried, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. A mother is supposed to leave something for her children. Yes, I replied, unflinching. And I did leave you something. I left you an example. I left you values. I left you an education. I gave you my time for years. But my money is mine. Jessica had gone pale. So, there's nothing? Nothing at all? Mr. Lewis spoke again. Your mother has also stipulated in her will that, upon her passing, all her material assets, including any property or possessions, will also be donated to the foundation. She has designated a symbolic inheritance of $1,000 to each of you. $1,000? Mark repeated with disbelief and contempt. $1,000 after being your children our whole lives? I got up. I walked to the window. The city stretched out before me, indifferent to this domestic drama. I took a deep breath before speaking. Let me tell you a story, I began. There's a 69-year-old woman who worked since she was 18, who raised 2 children practically alone because her husband died when they were young, who denied herself luxuries, vacations, new clothes, so her children could have everything, who cooked thousands of dinners that no one thanked her for, who canceled doctor's appointments because someone always needed her, who was invisible for decades. My voice held steady, though I felt a lump in my throat. That woman received a promotion, recognition for 26 years of flawless work. She moved to another city. She started a new life, and no one, absolutely no one in her family, noticed. Until they saw a picture of a nice apartment. Then, suddenly, that woman existed. But she only existed as a source of money. I turned to face them. That woman is me. And I decided that I am not going to spend my final years being a bank. I am going to spend them being a person. Daniel, Megan's husband, spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, almost compassionate. Mrs. Carroll, I understand your point. I really do. But I think you're being very radical. Megan isn't a bad person. We just thought we could count on you. And you can, I said. You can count on me for advice, for company, for love, but not for money. That is over. Megan was sobbing openly now. Mom, I love you. I really do love you. Not just for money. I looked at her, with tenderness despite everything. I know, Megan. I love you too. But loving you doesn't mean sacrificing myself until I disappear. Mark was pacing, clearly furious. This is insane. You're going to end up alone, completely alone. Is that what you want? If being alone means having peace, I answered calmly, then yes, that's what I want. Jessica stood up. Her mask of composure had finally cracked. You are a cruel woman. My mother is dying, and you have money to help, but you'd rather give it to strangers. Your mother is not my responsibility, Jessica, I said firmly. It's sad. It's painful. But it is not my obligation to solve all the problems of my son's family. But you're his mother-in-law, and you are an adult woman with your own life and your own resources. And if Mark loves you, he will find a way to help your mother. But that way is not me. Mark moved close to me. His face was red with contained rage. You know what, Mom? You're right about one thing. I don't recognize you. The mom I knew was generous, loving, always there for us. The mom you knew was exhausted, I interrupted. She was empty. She was disappearing, and nobody noticed until it was too late. It's not too late, Megan said through her sobs. We can still fix this. I shook my head. There's nothing to fix, Megan. There's only something to accept. This is me now, and you either accept me this way, or you don't. But I am not going back to who I was. Mr. Lewis packed the documents back into his briefcase. If you'll allow me, he said, I believe everything is clear. The papers are signed. The foundation is established. Mrs. Carroll's decisions are legally binding, and cannot be reversed without her consent. Mark glared at him. You convinced her to do this. You took advantage of an old woman. Mr. Lewis stood up with dignity. Young man, I have been practicing law for 40 years, and I can assure you, your mother has more mental clarity than many people half her age. No one manipulated her. She made these decisions on her own. There was a moment of silence where we all processed what had happened. The final confrontation, the definitive end. I think it's time for you to go, I said softly. There's nothing left to talk about. Mark looked at me with something that seemed like a mix of pain and contempt. This isn't over, Mom. Yes, it is, Mark. Right here. Right now. They stood up slowly. Megan was still crying. Jessica had a look of frozen disbelief on her face. Daniel looked uncomfortable, as if he finally understood he had been dragged into something that wasn't his business. Before they crossed the threshold, I stopped them with my words. One more thing, I said. I love you. Despite everything, you are my children. But loving you does not mean destroying myself for you. I hope someday you understand that. Mark left without looking back. Jessica followed him. Daniel put his hand on Megan's shoulder to guide her out. Megan stopped in the doorway. She turned. Mom, she whispered. Is there really no way we can change your mind? I looked at her with tenderness. No, honey, there isn't. She nodded slowly and left. I closed the door. I leaned against it. Mr. Lewis was still there, standing in the middle of my living room, watching me with a concerned expression. Are you all right, Mrs. Carroll? I took a deep breath. I'm at peace, Mr. Lewis. He did something unexpected. He handed me a card. This is for an excellent therapist, a colleague, just in case you need to talk to a professional about all this. I took the card. Thank you. I'll consider it. He picked up his briefcase and walked to the door. Before leaving, he stopped. Mrs. Carroll, I've seen many families fight over money in my 40 years, but I have rarely seen someone with the courage to set boundaries before they die. Most wait until it's too late. You did something very brave today. His words hit me hard. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, for everything. When he left, I was alone in my apartment. The silence was different now. It wasn't the tense silence before a storm. It was the silence after the storm has passed, and all that's left is calm. I walked to the balcony. The sun was beginning to set. The sky was painted in oranges and pinks. The city vibrated with life. And I was here, present, whole, mine. I picked up my phone. I called Claire. It's over, she asked before I said anything. It's over. How are you? I'm okay. I'm really okay. I heard her sigh of relief on the other end. I'm so glad, Carol, I'm so glad. We hung up, and I stood there, on my balcony, feeling the cool breeze on my face. I thought about all the years I had spent being small, invisible, sacrificial, and I thought about this moment where I was finally visible to myself. I didn't need Mark to recognize me. I didn't need Megan to understand me. I didn't need Jessica to forgive me. I just needed this space, this peace, this life I had built with my own hands. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The days that followed that confrontation were strangely silent. My phone didn't ring. There were no angry texts, no midnight calls. It was as if Mark, Megan, and Jessica had finally understood that there was nothing left to say. Or maybe they were just regrouping, planning a new attack. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. On Monday, I arrived at work, and Brian immediately noticed something different about me. You look radiant, he said with curiosity. What happened? I closed a chapter, I replied. A very long and very painful chapter. And how does it feel? I thought for a moment. Free. I feel free. He smiled. That's the best thing I could hear, Mrs. Carroll. That week, I focused on my work like never before. I proposed a restructuring of the department, which was approved by the CEO. I trained my team on new systems. I stayed late not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because my work filled me with purpose and pride. On Friday afternoon, as I was about to leave, I received an email. It was from Megan. The subject line just said, Mom, please read. I hesitated before opening it. But curiosity won. The email was long, very long, but I read the whole thing. It started with apologies. She said she had been thinking all week, that she had talked to Daniel, that he had made her see things she didn't want to admit, that I was right, that they had been selfish, that they had gotten used to having me there, available, always giving. I didn't realize how much we had hurt you until I saw you that Saturday, she wrote. So firm, so decided, so different. And it scared me, Mom, because I understood that I had lost you, not because you moved away physically, but because I never really had you. I never saw you as a person, only as Mom, as the one who is always there. She went on to say that Mark was still furious, that Jessica had stopped talking to her, that the family was broken, but that she didn't want to continue like this. I'm not writing to ask for money, she said near the end. I'm writing because I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry, and I understand if you don't want to forgive me. I understand if you need time, or if you need distance forever, but I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that at least one of your children finally sees you. The email ended with a simple sentence, I love you, Mom, and I'm so sorry. I closed my laptop and sat at my desk as the office emptied out around me. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, residual anger, sadness, but also something like hope. I didn't reply that day, nor the next. I needed to process what I had read. I needed to be sure that any answer I gave was genuine and not a product of guilt or habit. Saturday morning, I went to the park where I usually walked. It was a perfect day. Families with children, elderly couples holding hands, runners with their headphones in. Life in all its beautiful normalcy. I sat on a bench under a huge tree. I took out my phone and reread Megan's email. This time, more calmly, with more clarity. I could feel it was genuine. Or at least, as genuine as Megan could be at this moment. Maybe it was the beginning of something. Or maybe it was just a moment of lucidity that would fade. I didn't know. But I knew that I had changed, and that change was permanent. I was not going back to being the mother who gave everything and expected nothing. I was not going back to being invisible. I wrote a short but honest reply. Megan, I received your email. Thank you for your words. They mean more than you know. But I need time. I need to see that this change is real and not just a momentary reaction. If you truly want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be a new relationship, not the one we had before. One where I matter too, where my needs also count, where I am not just your mother, but also a person. If you are willing to do that, we can try, but it will take time, and it will require effort from both of us. I love you. I will always love you. But I love you from a place of self-respect now. Mom. I sent the email before I could second-guess it. That afternoon, Brian invited me to a photography exhibition. It was the work of a friend of his, portraits of older people in different professions. There was an 80-year-old doctor, a 75-year-old carpenter, a 68-year-old dancer. We walked through the gallery in contemplative silence. The photographs were beautiful. They dignified age. They showed that life doesn't end at 60, that there is beauty, purpose, and value in every stage. One photo in particular stopped me. It was a woman in her 70s, sitting at a desk piled high with books and papers. She had glasses hanging from a chain around her neck and a serene smile. The title of the photo was Second Career, Lawyer at 65. I stared at it for a long time. That could be you, Brian said quietly beside me. Full of life, full of purpose, beautiful in your authenticity. His words moved me more than I expected. Thank you for bringing me here, Brian. Thank you for coming. I know it's been a tough week. It's been difficult, but it's also been liberating. We left the gallery and went to dinner at a small, cozy Italian restaurant. We ate pasta and drank red wine. We talked about everything but family. We talked about trips we wanted to take, books we had read, movies we liked, dreams we still had. I realized something in that moment, that I could have a social life, genuine friendships, new experiences. I didn't have to be defined just as mother or employee. I could just be Carol, A 69-year-old woman with a whole life ahead of her. On Sunday, I received a reply from Megan. It was shorter this time. You're right. You need time. And I need to change. For real. I'm starting therapy. Daniel convinced me. He says I have issues with boundaries and codependency. He's probably right. I'll keep you updated on my process. Without expecting anything in return. Just because I want you to know I'm trying. I love you, Mom. I read that message 3 times. Therapy. Megan was going to therapy. Something I had suggested years ago, and she had rejected, saying she wasn't crazy. Maybe change was possible. Maybe not with Mark, who seemed too trapped in his pride and anger. But maybe with Megan. Maybe, over time. That week, I called the therapist Mr. Lewis had recommended. Dr. Evelyn Reed. I made an appointment for the following Thursday. When I told Brian, he congratulated me. It's brave to seek help, he said. A lot of people never take that step. I feel like I need it, not because I'm broken, but because I want to process all this in a healthy way. That's exactly what therapy should be. On Thursday, I arrived at Dr. Reed's office. It was a warm space with plants, books, and a large window that let in a lot of natural light. She was a woman in her 50s, with short, graying hair and a kind smile. Tell me, Carol, she said after the introductions. What brings you here? And I told her everything. From the beginning. From the years of being invisible to the move nobody noticed. From Claire's photo to the confrontation with my children. From the foundation to Megan's email. She listened without judgment. She took occasional notes. She nodded with understanding. When I finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me directly. Carol, do you know what I see when I listen to you? What do you see? I see a woman who finally decided to live, who had the courage to break destructive patterns, who chose her own well-being over guilt. That isn't selfishness. That is emotional survival. Her words validated me in a way I didn't know I needed. But is it normal to still feel guilty sometimes? I asked. Even after everything? Completely normal. Guilt is a conditioned emotion. You spent decades being conditioned to feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. That doesn't just disappear overnight, but with work, with time, that guilt can transform into something healthier, appropriate responsibility. And what does that mean? It means being responsible for your own actions and emotions, not for the actions and emotions of others. It means understanding that you can love your children without sacrificing yourself into non-existence, that you can support them emotionally without destroying yourself financially. I left that session feeling lighter, clearer, more certain that I had made the right decisions. The following weeks fell into a new rhythm. I worked. I had lunch with Brian. I went to therapy on Thursdays. I walked in the park on Saturdays. I talked to Claire on the phone twice a week. Megan sent me occasional updates on her therapy. She never asked for anything. She just shared her process. I replied with short but affectionate messages, building something new, brick by brick. Mark never contacted me again, and I didn't reach out to him. There was peace in that distance. A month after the confrontation, Mr. Lewis called me. The Second Chance Foundation was officially operational. They had received their first request for aid from a 72-year-old woman abandoned by her children after she sold her house to pay off their debts. We approved her application, Mr. Lewis said. Thanks to you, she's going to have a place to live. I was speechless. My money, the money I had saved for decades, was helping someone like me, someone who had been made invisible and discarded. Thank you for letting me know, Mr. Lewis. That means everything. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine. The stars shone shyly between the city lights. The breeze was cool and carried the scent of flowers from the building's garden. I thought about the entire journey, about the woman I was 6 months ago, small, invisible, exhausted, and the woman I was now, complete, visible to myself, at peace. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no magical reconciliation. There were no perfect apologies. But there was something better. There was truth. There were boundaries. There was dignity. And for the first time in 69 years, there was life. My life, completely mine. 3 months after that confrontation, my life had found a rhythm I never thought possible. I woke up every morning without that weight on my chest I had carried for decades. The apartment, which at first had seemed too big for one person, now felt exactly the right size. It was my sanctuary, my space, my home. One Tuesday afternoon, while reviewing reports in the office, I received an unexpected call. It was Megan. "Mom?" Her voice sounded different, more mature, more self-aware. "Do you have time to talk?" "Of course," I said, closing my laptop. "I wanted to tell you something. I finished my first month of therapy, and my therapist helped me understand a lot of things. Things about me, about us, about how we treated you." She paused. I heard her shaky breath. "Mom, I never saw you as a person. Only as Mom. As someone who would always be there. And when you left, when you set boundaries, I felt abandoned. But it wasn't abandonment. It was self-care. Something I never allowed you to have." Her words hit me hard. "Go on, Megan. I've been working on my own boundaries too, with Daniel, with the kids, with Mark. And it's hard. It's so hard to say no, to feel like I'm disappointing someone. Now I understand what it must have been like for you, all those years." I wiped away a tear that had started to roll down my cheek. "I'm glad you're doing that work, Megan. I really am. I wanted to ask you something. No pressure, no expectations. Could we see each other? Maybe have lunch together? I would come to your city. I'd pay for my trip. I just want to see you. To talk. To get to know the new Carol." I thought about her request. The old me would have said yes immediately, without thinking, but the new me needed to be sure. "Let me think about it, Megan. It's not a no. I just need time to consider it." "I completely understand. Take all the time you need." We hung up, and I stared out my office window. Brian came in with 2 cups of coffee. "Everything okay?" he asked, placing a cup in front of me. "Megan wants to come visit." "And what do you want?" That was the right question. Not what should I do. Not what was the right thing. But what did I want? I think I want to give her a chance, but with clear conditions. That sounds wise. That night, I called Dr. Reed. I told her about Megan's call and my doubts. "Carol," she said in her calm voice, "you have built healthy boundaries. Now you get to choose if you want to open a small door. With conditions. You don't have to throw all the doors open at once. You can go slowly. See how it feels. And if she hurts you again, you will close that door again. But this time, you'll know how. You'll have the tools. You're not in that vulnerable place anymore." She was right. I had changed, and that change was permanent. I texted Megan that night. A carefully worded message. "Megan, I've thought about your proposal. I will agree to you visiting, but I need to set a few things first. 1, this meeting is just between you and me. No Daniel, no kids, no Mark. 2, we will not talk about money, of any kind. 3, if at any point I feel you are falling back into old patterns, I will end the visit. If you agree to these conditions, we can meet next Saturday. There's a restaurant I like here. We can have lunch." "Mom." Her reply came in minutes. "I accept all your conditions. Thank you for giving me this chance. I love you." Saturday dawned with a clear but cold sky. I dressed with care, not with nervousness, but with intention. I chose a dark green dress I had bought last month. I did my hair. I put on a little makeup. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who respected herself. Megan was on time for the restaurant. I saw her walk in and was surprised by how different she looked. Her hair was shorter. Her clothes were simpler. Less makeup. She seemed more real, more present. We hugged. It was a cautious hug, but genuine. We sat by the window. We ordered food. The first few minutes were awkward. Small talk about the weather, the trip, the restaurant. Then Megan took a deep breath. "Mom, I want to start by apologizing. Not the generic apologies I gave you before, but specific ones." I listened in silence. "I apologize for all the times I dropped the kids off without asking if you could watch them. For assuming your time belonged to me. For not celebrating your promotion. for not asking how you were when you moved, for only looking for you when I needed something, for treating you like a resource and not a person." Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. "And I apologize for that Saturday we came to your apartment, for going with that agenda, for thinking I was entitled to your money, for making you feel guilty for taking care of yourself." I took her hand across the table. "Megan, I appreciate your apologies. I really do. And I accept them. But you need to understand that whatever we build from now on will be different. I can't go back to being the mom I was. I don't want you to go back to being that mom," she said firmly. "I want to get to know this mom, Carol, the woman who had the courage to choose herself." We had lunch for 2 hours. We talked about her therapy, about my sessions with Dr. Reed, about the foundation and the first person it had helped, about her relationship with Daniel and how they were working on communicating better. I told her about Brian and our outings, about the hike in the mountains, about my new book club at the local library. She showed me pictures of the kids. Mason had won a science fair. Lily was learning ballet. I realized I could enjoy these stories without feeling like I had to be an active part of every aspect of their lives. When we finished eating, we walked through the nearby park. The air was crisp, and the leaves were beginning to change color. "And Mark?" I finally asked. Megan sighed. "He's still angry. Very angry. He says you betrayed him. That a mother doesn't do what you did. Jessica and he are in couples counseling because their relationship is suffering from all this." "Jessica's mother? She's in treatment. I don't know all the details. Mark doesn't tell me much lately. I think he's ashamed. I'm sorry he's going through that. But my position stands, Megan. It wasn't my responsibility to solve that problem." "I know, Mom. I understand that now." We sat on a bench under a tree. The sun created patterns of light through the leaves. "Do you think Mark and I will ever be able to reconcile?" I asked. Megan thought before answering. "Honestly, I don't know. Mark is very proud, and I think he's embarrassed about how he acted. Sometimes shame disguises itself as anger, but maybe, with time. If he also does the work I'm doing, time will tell." "Time will tell," I said. When it was time for Megan to go to the airport, we said goodbye with a hug that was longer than the first. "Thank you for giving me this chance, Mom. Thank you for respecting it, Megan. Can we do this again? In a month or 2? I'd like that." I watched her drive away in the taxi and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time regarding my children. Hope. Not the blind hope of before, but a realistic hope, built on new, healthier foundations. That night, sitting on my balcony as I had on so many other nights, I reflected on the entire journey. I had lost the relationship I had with Mark, maybe forever, and that hurt. But I had gained something more valuable. I had gained myself. The relationship with Megan was rebuilding, slowly but genuinely, and that was enough. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Brian. "How was lunch with your daughter?" I replied, "Better than expected. I'll tell you about it on Monday." Then another message, this one from Claire. "How did it go with Megan?" "Good. There's hope." "I'm so glad, sister. You deserve it." I looked at the city lights. I listened to the wind. I felt the peace I had fought so hard to build. The Second Chance Foundation had already helped 3 more people. Mr. Lewis sent me monthly reports. Each story reminded me why I had made that decision. At work, they had offered to extend my contract another 5 years with the possibility of consulting after retirement. I had accepted. I still had so much to offer professionally. The book club had become an important part of my routine. Women of different ages, discussing books, sharing lives, creating community. And Brian. Brian had become a genuine friend, someone who saw me as a whole person, not as a mother, not as an employee, just as Carol. I got up and went inside the apartment. I made chamomile tea. I put on soft music. I sat on my sofa with a blanket over my legs and a book I had been wanting to read. And in that simple, ordinary, perfect moment, I understood something fundamental. This was my life, not a life of waiting, not a life of obligatory service, not a life of invisibility, but my real, present, vibrant life. I had learned that setting boundaries was not cruelty, that choosing yourself was not selfishness, that no was a complete sentence, that true love included self-love. I had learned that it was possible to start over at 69, that it's never too late to choose to live, that peace is worth more than approval, that silence can be freedom, not loneliness. And for the first time in all my decades of existence, the silence was exactly that. Silence. Not pain, not absence, not punishment. Just silence. Beautiful, deserved, chosen, just peace.